Congressman Goodlatte has been a leader in these efforts for a long time. He currently is the chair of the House Judiciary Subcommittee on Intellectual Property, Competition, and the Internet. He also, for quite some time, has been co-chair of the Congressional Arts Caucus. He also serves as chair of the House Republican High Technology Working Group. He's going to share some remarks. We'll do some Q&A. Look forward to a fun and thoughtful exchange. Please join me in welcoming Congressman Bob Goodlatte.
Michael, thank you for that kind introduction, but lest anybody think I have artistic skills, it's the Congressional Internet Caucus that I am the co-chair of, although I would like to be the chairman of the Congressional Arts Caucus. It's a pleasure to be with all of you, and congratulations on 10 years of having great summit meetings to talk about the opportunities and challenges that face the music industry. During that period of time, I have been involved in these issues in the Congress. If you don't recognize my name, don't know who I am, that's all right. I don't know who you are either. In fact, you know, during the debate on the health care policy over the last couple of years, I went to a nursing home in my district, and I saw a lady sitting there, and I went up to her and I said, "Do you know who I am?" And she looked at me and she said, "No, but if you ask at the nurses' station, they might be able to tell you." So I have some prepared remarks I'd like to share with you, but before I do, I want to warn you that recently when I spoke to a high school class, I asked the students at the end of the class, I said, now if you had 1 hour left to live, what would you want to spend it doing? Well, a lot of hands went up and a lot of students had interesting ideas about places they'd like to go or things they'd like to do if they had just 1 hour left to live. And finally, one young lady raised her hand and she said, "Congressman Goodlatte, if I had just 1 hour left to live, I'd want to spend it listening to you speak." Well, you laughed, but I was flattered. I said, "If you had 1 hour left to live, you'd want to spend it listening to me speak." She said, "Oh, yes, because each moment seems like an eternity." So, lest you feel like you're going to live forever, let me get started here and lay out some thoughts for you, and then I'll be happy to take your questions or hear your comments. It's good to see such a broad array of interests coming together to discuss and solve the challenges that are facing the music industry. Article 1, Section 8 of our Constitution lays the framework for our nation's copyright laws. It grants Congress the power to award inventors and creators for limited periods of time exclusive rights to their inventions and works. The Founding Fathers realized that this type of incentive was crucial to ensure that America would become the world's leader in innovation and creativity. As we continue our journey into the digital age, we must be sure to continue to reward our innovators with the exclusive rights to their works for limited periods of time. This incentive is still necessary to maintain America's position as the world leader in innovation. In Congress, I serve as the chairman of the House Judiciary Subcommittee on Intellectual Property, which has jurisdiction over all intellectual property matters and many technology issues. I also serve as chairman of the Congressional Internet Caucus, as was mentioned, and the bipartisan bicameral caucus dedicated to exploring all policy issues affecting the Internet. Throughout my time in Congress, there have been many disagreements between the technology sector and the content community about how best to ensure that authors, musicians, and inventors continue to have the incentives to create. In fact, I was the member who sat in the room with both the content community and the ISPs and the technology community to negotiate the notice and takedown provisions of the DMCA. And that was a hot room and went for a long time. But we did work out a compromise on how to deal with protecting copyright in the digital environment. But in doing so, I think most people in the room, and certainly many of us in the Congress who are working on this, recognize that the Congress is a very slow-moving body. In fact, it seems to get slower and slower every year. And the fact of the matter is that technology moves very, very quickly. So we wrote that law in anticipation that there would be changes in business models, changes in technology, and changes in the way the public viewed the use of various types of protected intellectual property that would move faster than Congress would. And now we're finding that after a decade or so, it's time to take a look again at some of the things that were done back then, and as the technology has changed and the business models have changed, and some of the online criminal activity has changed, we need to look at new legislation. I've long held that content community and the technology community need each other, and they are best equipped to solve many of the challenges the industries face today. In addition, while I believe we must pass laws to crack down on those who steal the intellectual property of others, I also strongly believe that the music industry needs to do more to meet the demands of consumers by finding new and innovative ways to deliver music that match consumers' expectations. And we are seeing more and more of that take place. In Congress, we try to pass laws that are dynamic and that can accommodate new technologies. But the fact of the matter is that Congress moves slowly, and it cannot contemplate all the innovations that continue to occur in the marketplace. And that's why I believe that any laws Congress passes must encourage the private sector to work together to solve these problems. But what are the problems? Global online theft threatens to decimate the music, movie, software, digital book, and other industries that are increasingly moving to digital delivery of goods and services. In recent years, online infringers have evolved. They've become increasingly sophisticated and produce websites that rival legitimate sites in appearance, operation, and indicia of reliability. After clicking on such a site, consumers are immediately reassured by the logos of U.S. payment processors, credit card companies, and others, and the presence of corporate advertising supporting the site. All the while, the operators of these websites steal the intellectual property of others to make money for themselves. Intellectual property is one of the U.S.'s top exports, and threats to the IP industries are threats to the U.S. economy and real jobs. America's IP industries remain strong, but increasingly they are being forced to watch as their ability to control their own works slips through their hands due to foreign piracy. Likewise, legitimate new technologies for delivering music increasingly face the Herculean task of competing with free. We must crack down on foreign infringing sites, and we are going to need the help of many in the online community to get the job done. This matter will continue to be a principal focus for the House IP Subcommittee in the coming weeks and months. We have deliberately moved slowly in crafting legislation to address foreign rogue websites in order to gather ideas through multiple hearings and meetings with both the private sector and government agencies. We have thrown the net open wide in order to get as many diverse viewpoints on this legislation as possible, including comments from the online, technology, financial services, and advertising communities. My goal is to create new, meaningful IP protections and bolster existing ones. Above all, the legislation must be effective and fair. I also want to make sure that any legislation we introduce does not have unintended consequences for the functioning of the Internet. As we continue drafting the bill, I look forward to working with you to make sure we get it right. Another way that Congress can help punish copyright theft while helping authors, performers, and legitimate music delivery systems is to update current law to make clear that the prohibitions on illegal downloading also apply to illegal streaming. In 1997, Congress enacted the No Electronic Theft Act, or the NET Act, which I introduced to strengthen the nation's copyright laws and to enhance the penalties for online theft of copyrighted materials. The NET Act closed a gaping loophole in our nation's criminal copyright law and gave law enforcement the tools it needs to bring to justice individuals who steal the products of America's authors, musicians, and software producers, even when that theft occurred electronically. However, when the NET Act was enacted, the primary form of infringing online distribution was by posting copies to an electronic bulletin board where others could download them. Subsequently, other technologies such as peer-to-peer, P2P, and torrents supplanted bulletin board services as the primary means of distributing copies of infringing copyrighted works online. Though more efficient than bulletin board services, these technologies generally continue to involve the reproduction and distribution of a copy of work. In contrast, today's streaming technologies enable individuals to provide illegal access to infringing works without necessarily requiring a copy to be reproduced or transmitted. By conditioning the availability of felony penalties on the requirement of a reproduction or distribution to be made, federal law unwittingly encourages one type of copyright infringement and unnecessarily restricts the deterrent effect of criminal prosecution. In terms of copyright policy, this issue requires policymakers to update the law to include public performances in some circumstances. This change will enable the law to reflect how criminals are misusing newer technologies and promote parity in enforcement. Intellectual property may be harder to protect than physical property, but it is no less valuable to those who create it, as well as those who invent innovative ways to get that content to consumers. I look forward to working with all of you to properly address these threats to the future of music. Thank you very much. Michael, I have my bulletproof vest on. I'm ready to take questions.
Hello, Congressman. Thanks for coming. Same question I've had for a number of people from Washington about this issue. Private behavior versus what the law is saying. Private behavior, we have a lot of people, vast majority of people that are interfacing with music on the internet in an illegal manner, according to the way federal law is now structured. How do you propose to deal with that in the future? I mean, how do you see prosecuting these people? Is it a process of educating them? How will you deal with the fact that there's a lot of people out there still dealing with it on an illegal basis?
Well, I think that you have to take a multifaceted approach to that. Yes, under some circumstances, we will prosecute people who, that was the whole purpose of the NET Act. Some of you may recall a case of I think it was an MIT student named Lamachia who said, hey, I've got access to all this great music. In fact, I think most of what he was giving away was software. I'm just going to put it up on an electronic bulletin board and let everybody know it's there, and they can go there and download it. He was prosecuted, and he was not convicted because he didn't have any direct profit from it, even though he gave away, ostensibly, millions of dollars worth of valuable software to the people who had created it. So the law was changed to say that if you gave away an amount above a certain threshold, that you could be held criminally accountable. And I think that aspect of the law will continue. It will need to be refined as we move forward, but it isn't going to solve the problem by itself. It's going to take an array of different innovative ideas in and of themselves to protect people's innovative and creative works of art. And so by that I mean education, to have people understand the consequences of their actions, because it is under the law, it might be very similar to going into a store in the good old days and taking a CD and putting it in your coat pocket and walking out the door, clearly something a violation of the law. But in terms of how it happens and the individual's mindset about it, it's quite different. And therefore, we have to really get people thinking about the fact that they are taking somebody else's ideas and converting them to their own benefit without compensating the individual who created them. And the ultimate result of that is a loss of incentives for creativity. Music is a little different than motion pictures, but you know, if you're talking about a motion picture that costs $250 million to produce, and the people who produce it can't recover those funds because everybody is getting access to it online and watching it under great new technologies that allow them to do that, but they're not paying for it. The incentive to produce that kind of thing is going to change creative art in a significant way, and I would suggest in many ways it will be to the detriment of those very same consumers who want to enjoy it. A third aspect of it is going to be the use of technology. It's sort of an escalating war between those who want to develop technology to exploit other people's works and the development of technology to try to protect those works, but I think that will go on as well. One of the most successful things, however, I think, is to understand what the modern consumer is looking for and change your business model to adapt to it so that we can't legislate this, folks. It has to be done in the business community, the people who create the works and the people who devise the technology to make those works available need to come up with more creative ways to make it as convenient as possible to the consumer while still having the consumer feel that it is more worthwhile, more ethically worthwhile, more conveniently worthwhile, more quality worthwhile to do the lawful new method of getting access to valuable works and being able to use those works in a variety of different settings, as people today like to move from what they've got in their ear as they walk down the street to what they're listening to or watching when they get home to what they're doing as they drive their vehicle, and they may be using some different devices to do that, and there's got to be a really convenient way for people to say, yes, I'm going to do that. And I see motion picture companies and music companies attempting to find new ways to do just that, and I think that's going to be a critical aspect of this. But it won't change the underlying need to maintain the principle that's in our Constitution, that people who develop creative works are entitled to the protection of the law for those works, and given the environment we're in, the Congress will continue to struggle to try to keep up with these rapidly changing business models and technologies.
Thank you, Congressman, for coming. I certainly agree a lot of the rogue foreign websites that you mentioned are certainly not sympathetic characters, but at the same time, I'm just remembering historically the content industry has tried to sue out of existence such inventions as the VCR, even bringing it to the Supreme Court. So I'm worried that if you start the precedent that the content industry can simply have new technologies or new services removed from the internet, that they could have the effect of freezing technological progress. So in particular, I'm wondering what, if you find your website being censored from the internet on the basis of an accusation from the content industry, what do you think should the procedure be to allow people to really defend themselves? Because it seems like you just wake up one day and a lot of these sites are finding that they're removed from the internet and they were given no advance warning.
Well, great question, but to your first point, how did that work out for those folks back then? Not too well. So I think that there's a much greater awareness on the part of the creators of content that they have got to recognize that this isn't just between them and the person who is doing something illegal, but it's between them, the person who's doing something illegal, and their customers who they want to develop and grow a good relationship and a loyal user base, consumer base, if you will. So from the standpoint of the Congress, we've looked at the way the Senate's approached this, and we've decided that we're going to attempt to do this somewhat differently. That's not to say that people who want to have as free and open ability to exploit works on the internet will like what we do, but we do want to do as much as possible to draw that line as clearly as possible between somebody who is abiding by the law and somebody who's not. So that's one of the challenges that we face in working this through. But we recognize that both the internet itself and the people who are doing business on the internet have rights that need to be taken into consideration and dealt with in this process. As to the details of that, you'll have to wait until the bill's introduced.
Thanks, Congressman, for coming down today. Appreciate it. You talked before about how copyright is and intellectual property laws are supposed to sort of promote innovation, and it seems like, it's been said that the 1976 Copyright Act is sort of, pre-VCR, and it really needs to be updated. When do you really see the possibility of how long it can take and for there to be like a meaningful sort of wipe the slate clean and really come up with a new Copyright Act that's sort of going to address the real potential of innovation that's happening now? It seems like the record labels and the content owners are punishing people as opposed to, and I don't think that's really the best default. I'm just wondering if you think there's any realistic timeline for a meaningful redrafting of the copyright law.
Well, I haven't seen, maybe there is one, but the Congress has not taken it up from the standpoint that we need to wipe the slate clean, as you put it, and write an entirely new law. Each iteration of this is an attempt to try to deal with the changing realities of modern technology and modern business models and so on, but not get away from the original concept that both protects intellectual property rights and the people who want to exploit them, but do so within the confines of the law. I mean, the intellectual property right is of little value to somebody who creates a great thing unless they can get somebody else to buy it from them. So the Congress can't solve that issue. All we can do is protect the underlying foundation that says that patents, copyrights, trademarks, other types of intellectual property are entitled to protection under the law, and then the debate falls to, well, how do you go about doing that? And that seems to be primarily what took place with the DMCA a decade or more ago, and it's the primary focus of the debate that's taking place right now and will take place as this new, I call it rogue websites legislation, but it encompasses really more than that. It really does attempt to look at the way people who create works are struggling to get protection under the law and decide, well, what works, what doesn't work. What doesn't work, let's not emphasize that so much. Let's focus on what does work and try to enhance the ability to make those things work. But as for a complete new copyright law, I don't know that you'll get that. We just went through a major overhaul of our patent laws. It took 59 years since the last major overhaul of our patent laws, and it is not a wipe the slate clean, let's start over again, here's what we do. It's a pretty significant change in how patents are issued and how they can be challenged and so on, but it's certainly not a wipe the slate clean kind of approach. So I'm not aware of any proposal in the Congress to do just that, and I don't think that's likely. But I do think some major legislation is working its way through right now and will be hotly debated, and all of you ought to pay close attention to it and have your voices heard through your elected representatives, wherever you're from. Thank you.